So I don't know if I've ever told you this, but my first church experience was here at Victory. And so 20 plus years ago, my first ever message about tithing was you. So you give this message very similar, honestly, to what you preached tonight. So it's the first time I ever heard the concept of tithing. And I had a unique response to it because I didn't have any church experience at all. So you said, hey, here's what it says in the Bible. We should tithe. And I went, okay. And so it was just an easy, I never questioned it because, well, if it's in the Bible, Pastor Dennis said we should do it, we're just going to do it. So I know that you've preached on it for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I've ever asked you, what was your encounter with that message of tithing? When you were coming to faith, like, what was that like for you to hear that for the first time, and how did you respond to it?
So what's interesting is when I first got saved, back in 1982, I was a businessman at the time. I had no concept of tithing, never heard it in a church or anything like that, and grew up around church, but I never heard it. And I just wanted to give something to God.
Oh.
I didn't know where to give it. So I had a friend that went to a little church in Richmond. I was living in New York at the time. And I started sending just a certain amount. I didn't send a tithe, I just sent money.
Okay.
And it turned out it was about 20% of what I was making.
Wow.
So even back then at the very beginning, I wasn't really understanding tithing, but I knew to give. And when I went to church, finally went to his church, and he started teaching on tithing, I started realizing I'm giving too much. I didn't know. I only had to give 10%.
Oh my gosh.
I never had a problem with it. For some
Wow.
reason, I'm like you. I was so innocent. I didn't have a history of mishandling money in the church or
Right.
pastors doing stuff like they do today. I just knew I want to give back to God.
Wow.
And so since I was already given 20%, I just said, Lord, I just want to stay here if I can,
Yeah,
as
that's
long as
good.
I can. And so yeah, I didn't have a like a hard time with it or problem with it. I know a lot of people do.
Mm-hmm.
Part of probably the reason is because I was doing okay financially. I wasn't struggling financially. Now, since that time, I've had seasons where there's been difficult times.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was my first experience. And when I heard the message, I was like, oh, I'm doing the right thing. I'm glad I'm doing the right thing.
That's good.
Yeah.
Why do you think this is such a issue for people? Why is it so hard for a lot of people to hear that and then respond to it?
I think it's the fear. It's like I was talking about tonight. You know, most people manage their money with fear. They're afraid they're going to lose it, not make the right decisions with it, or they're going to go without something, or they're going to be without something. And so they tend to be a little bit more protective over money. Money I always say it this way, it's the last thing we give to God, and it's usually the first thing when we fall away from God we take away.
Wow.
It's the closest indicator of our heart for God, because he says where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.
Yeah.
And so when we started this church, I figured if people will tithe here, their hearts will be here.
Wow.
And if we have their hearts, we can do a lot of great things.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
So you told the story again tonight, which I've heard a few times. You're 48 years old.
Yeah.
And you and Pastor Colleen decide you're going to give all of your investment away. I am now 45, and when I heard that story when you originally told it, I didn't have any investment. So that, I was like, that's really cool, but I didn't have the weight of it, and now I do.
Yeah.
So the thought of at 48 giving it all to God is terrifying. What was that process? Was that like?
It was terrifying. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
I had this moment, I think everybody has moments with God. And I had this moment in my office where I'm thinking about the rich young ruler, and Jesus says, give everything away. And I just read The Blessed Life, and so it challenged me as well. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like, I didn't feel like the Lord was asking me to do it. I felt like I'm just asking myself, can I do it?
Wow.
And the more I got into that conversation with myself, the more I realized, maybe I'm supposed to do this. And so that's when I talked to Colleen, and I'm married to this amazing wife who, she's not the most economical thinker. She doesn't think about money that much. She just thinks she's great at spending it, but and so she just said, let's do it. And it was just so easy for her to say that. And I thought, you understand what that means? You know, I mean, we have no idea on the other side of this what that life is going to look like. But when we did it, it was like something shifted inside of our life and our heart with God, that we could do that, that we had the commitment to God, we had the relationship with God, that we trusted Him enough that He would eventually, it would come back to us.
Yeah.
You know, we weren't given to get anything. We were just, actually we were in a building program. We were trying to pay for this building that we're in right now. Yeah, it was terrifying. I'm glad I did it. I don't know if I could do it again, but
Yeah.
I did it once, and but I tell people, don't do it just because I did it. You have to
Yeah.
have a revelation of it before you do something like that.
That's so good. You also say, I've told the story that in the early years of Victory, when you would come to the end of the year, you would empty out the church bank account. Was that sort of in line with?
It was in the first, I guess, 3 years. We did that. We emptied our bank accounts, and I think we kept 2 weeks for the first 2 weeks of the year to pay. It was a statement of faith that I wanted to make for the church. I wanted the church to have that statement of faith that we did that. And every year, our income either doubled or tripled after that.
Wow.
Once we did that. So we never struggled after that. It was kind of like, once we got the epiphany that you can't outgive God, then God blessed it and has continued to do it all these years.
That's so good, Pastor.
Yeah.
All right, last question.
Sure.
This message, if you could make it so people took away one thing from this message and actually did it, what would that one thing be?
I think the biggest revelation that we had in this message is you have to understand that there is a curse on the earth. And that's a big revelation. People don't realize, well, why is there so much poverty? Why is there so much heartache? Because there's a curse. And the devil is running this show right here. And we're living within the kingdom of God, but living in the earth as well. So we're in the world, but we're not of the world.
Right.
And so I think the biggest revelation is how to get out of that curse, how to break that curse off of your life, financial curse, whether it's whatever the curse is doing in your life, whether it's your marriage or whatever. And He only gave that one directive, which was, when you give your tithe, the first fruits of your increase, He said it will break the curse.
Wow.
And it will, not only that, but it'll open the windows of heaven over your life. And both Colleen and I decided I think it's a lot better to live with an open heaven over you than to live with a closed heaven.
Wow.
And I see so many people in the church that they do love God, but they just haven't been able to let go and trust Him in their finances. It's a big thing. So the big takeaway is, once you take that step of faith, you let go of fear and you embrace faith in your finances, then your life completely takes on a whole different dimension.
Wow. That's well said, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Pastor.
All right, man. Love you.
Love you too.